Money is one of the most powerful tools humanity has ever created. It's how we measure value, trade goods, and secure our futures. But for most people, money feels more like a challenge than a tool. Rent consumes our income, saving feels impossible, and the dream of owning a home out of reach for many. Why is it that something designed to help us thrive often leaves us feeling trapped? To answer that, we need to look at the history of money, what it was, what it's become, and where it's headed. Before money, there was barter. You might trade a basket of grain for a goat or a few fish for a jug of wine, but barter had a problem, the double coincidence of wants. Both parties needed to want what the other had at the same time. To solve this, communities turned to commodity money. Items everyone agreed had value and were relatively scarce, such as shells and salt. Shells, for example, were used across many cultures. In fact, the word shelling, meaning to pay or exchange money, comes from the use of shells as currency. These simple objects were easy to carry and became widely recognized as money. In ancient China, cowrie shells were so valuable that they were used for thousands of years as currency, and are still used in some parts of the world today as a form of trade. Salt, too, was a powerful currency. The word salary comes from the Latin word salarium, which referred to the payment Roman soldiers received in salt. In fact, salt was so valuable that it was often referred to as white gold, and the trade of salt helped establish ancient trade routes, shaping economies long before paper money. Eventually, metal coins replaced these goods. Gold and silver, with their natural properties, became the backbone of monetary systems. These metals were durable, divisible, and universally recognized, making them an ideal medium of exchange. Their intrinsic value was widely accepted, and they didn't just store value, they created trust. With these coins, you didn't need to know someone personally to trade with them. The coin itself held the promise of value, an agreed upon standard that transcended individual relationships. This simple yet powerful system made commerce more efficient, allowing societies to thrive and grow in ways that were previously unimaginable. As societies grew in size and complexity, carrying heavy metal coins became impractical. It was then that banks began issuing paper notes, promising that these notes could be exchanged for real gold. This system became known as the gold standard, and it worked for centuries, creating stability and trust. Governments and businesses alike relied on it, and it allowed for the expansion of the economies across the world. But as economies became more intricate and governments needed more flexibility, they started to abandon the gold standard, deciding they no longer needed gold to back their money. Today, most money is digital, a mere number in a bank account, created with a keystroke. This digital money is convenient and essential for the modern economy. But here's the catch: while the modern system may be more practical than its predecessors, it comes with critical flaws. The centralized fiat based system is vulnerable to inflation, manipulation, and cycles of economic instability that can drastically affect our everyday lives. In the modern era, money is no longer a store of value. Central banks, centralized authorities, control its creation and supply. This gives them immense power to influence economies. But it also creates vulnerabilities. Imagine a single point of control in a dam holding back a vast river. If that control fails or is mismanaged, the flood affects everyone downstream. Fiat money operates in the same way. When central banks print more money, it devalues what's already in circulation. This process, called inflation, erodes savings and makes the cost of living rise. Inflation is like a hole in your bucket. The harder you work to fill it, the more it leaks. And because the system is centralized, decisions made at the top ripple down, often leaving everyday people with a burden. This is where Bitcoin changes everything. Bitcoin is not just digital money, it's decentralized money. Unlike traditional currencies, Bitcoin operates without a central authority. There's no government, no bank, no middleman controlling it. The supply is fixed at 21 million coins, which means it cannot be inflated or manipulated by any single entity. It's designed to be immune to the inflationary pressure that plague fiat currencies. Think about it, fiat money, which is controlled by central banks, is printed and circulated at their discretion. They can raise or lower interest rates, print more money, or even adjust the value to meet political goals. This introduces a massive amount of risk to the financial system. Inflation erodes savings, and economic uncertainty creates chaos for millions. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is different. Its supply is hard coded, predictable, and fixed. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin in existence. The scarcity is built into the very foundation of the system, giving it value that isn't susceptible to the whims of governments or central banks. But what really sets Bitcoin apart is its decentralized nature. Instead of relying on a single centralized authority, Bitcoin uses a system called the blockchain. This is a distributed ledger where every transaction is recorded across a global network of computers, ensuring that no one person or institution can control or alter it. Every transaction is verified by a network of independent participants or miners, each working to ensure that the system remains transparent, secure, and trustworthy. Unlike traditional banking systems where a central bank or institution is in charge of verifying transactions, Bitcoin decentralized network removes the single point of failure. No one entity can manipulate the system because control is distributed among thousands of participants. The system is self-regulating, open, and transparent, meaning that anyone can verify the accuracy of transactions and the integrity of the network. Think of it like a forest. Each tree stands on its own, but the forest as a whole thrives because of the interconnected roots, the ecosystem that supports everything. In the same way, Bitcoin decentralized nature ensures that no single entity has too much control, and the system remains resilient. Just like a forest isn't dependent on one tree to survive, Bitcoin doesn't rely on one bank or one government to function. This is Bitcoin's greatest strength, decentralization. It removes the risk of a single point of failure, empowers individuals, and provides a transparent and trustless system. No longer do you need to rely on a third party or institution to verify your transactions or store your wealth. With Bitcoin, the people are in control. Meanwhile, the housing system reflects a similar problem as the financial system. Housing prices don't rise simply because of intrinsic value. They mostly increase due to speculation, monetary inflation, short-term profit maximization, and artificial scarcity. These forces manipulate the market in ways that benefit a few while locking the rest into cycles of dependence. Dependence on landlords, dependence on banks, dependence on unsustainable centralized systems that only serve to widen the gap between the privileged and the disadvantaged. The current housing market is a game of musical chairs. As the music of speculation and financial profit plays, the number of chairs or affordable homes shrinks. And when the music stops, millions are left standing, priced out of the market, with no place to call home. Most people are squeezed, unable to afford rent or mortgages, while few continue to profit from ever-rising housing prices. The result? Rising rents, unattainable mortgages, and entire generations locked out of homeownership. But the real issue isn't just about unaffordable housing. It's about a system that prioritizes short-term profits over long-term solutions. This centralization of the housing market means that large institutions and landlords control vast amounts of property, concentrating wealth and power in the hands of a few. These entities are solely motivated by financial profit, often at the expense of the well-being of entire communities. They create artificial scarcity by buying up properties and leaving them vacant, driving up prices and forcing many people into precarious living situations. Historically, owning a home was a key part of the ideal life. After World War II, the growth of suburbs and affordable mortgages made homeownership possible for many families. In those times, it was common for middle class families to own large homes, and having a house was seen as a way to build stability in community. Think of how in The Simpsons, Homer and Marge were able to afford a spacious house on a single blue collar salary, a symbol of a time where home ownership was accessible to working families. But over the years, property ownership has become more centralized, and speculative markets have turned housing into a commodity. Today, it's not just about providing homes for people, it's about making a quick profit, leaving many families struggling to find a place to live. Today, large investment firms, hedge funds, and institutional investors control huge chunks of the housing market. In fact, since the 2008 financial crisis, institutional investors have been buying up single-family homes in bulk, turning them into rental properties. The result? Renters pay more and home ownership becomes unattainable for many. This centralization creates a vicious cycle where those who control the property hold all the power, while the rest of society is left with fewer options and less control over their living situations. The housing crisis is a symptom of centralization, and much like centralized money, centralized living structures create a system that benefits the few while disenfranchising the many. But just as Bitcoin offers an alternative to centralized money, decentralized housing offers a way out of this crisis. Imagine a world where housing isn't controlled by large corporations or banks, but rather communities and individuals working together to create fair, accessible living spaces. Decentralized living is the key to solving this problem. Just as Bitcoin decentralizes money and takes power away from centralized financial institutions, decentralized housing can democratize living spaces, putting control back into the hands of the people. It means leveraging new technologies like blockchain to manage housing transparently, ensuring that resources are distributed fairly and equitably. It's about creating spaces where individuals can own property collectively, make decisions collaboratively, and build communities based on shared values, not merely on financial profit maximization. Decentralized living offers not just a solution to the housing crisis, but a vision for a more equitable future. By removing the central points of control, we can free ourselves from the financial systems that have failed us and build a system that works for everyone. ColivingDAO is pioneering decentralized living. Using blockchain technology, ColivingDAO creates communities where housing is fair, transparent, and built around people, not short-term financial profit. Rent contributions are reinvested into the community. Decisions about resources and policies are made collectively, with the blockchain ensuring transparency and trust. It's not just about solving the housing crisis, it's about creating a new way to live. Visit ColivingDAO.com now to learn how you too can be part of this revolution. Together, we can build a future where housing is more than survival, it's a foundation for thriving.